The war in West Asia is exploding even further, intensifying. Some of the world's biggest energy hubs have become targets, sparking fears of lasting damage to global economy. Iran carried out a series of attacks in the latest on Gulf energy sites, including Qatar's huge Ras Laffan LNG facility. It was in retaliation for an Israeli strike on its South Pars gas field, part of the world's largest natural gas reservoir. One hour after the attack on Ras Laffan, President Trump fired a social media post calling for strikes to halt. Trump claimed he knew nothing of Israel's attack on South Pars and vowed that Israel will not attack the site anymore if Tehran stops attacking Qatar. He also added a warning for Iran: if it targets Qatar again, he will blow up South Pars gas field. Multiple media reports said that Trump's claim was not accurate. According to the Wall Street Journal, Trump knew about and even supported this attack. Axios, citing US and Israeli officials, reported that Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, they coordinated over this strike. The aim is to try and deter Iran from blocking the Strait of Hormuz. Reports also add that the president now believes that Iran got the message and wants no more strikes. Now, all this comes as Trump is facing scrutiny over claims on Israeli influence. Joe Kent, who recently quit as the director of National Counter-Terrorism Center, he has claimed that Iran posed no imminent threat to the US. He even claimed that the administration started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. Now, Kent's former boss and director of national intelligence, that's Tulsi Gabbard, she was in a recent Senate hearing and has admitted that intelligence showed Iran was not rebuilding its nuclear enrichment capabilities following last year's US and Israeli attacks during the 12-day war. Trump is also facing flack over failing to outline his objectives for the war. Democrats have questioned his shifting rationale. Allies have snubbed his call to send their warships to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The latest criticism came from a French general who said that joining Trump's war is like buying a discounted ticket for the Titanic after it had already hit the iceberg. Retired three-star general and former commander of the French Foreign Legion, Michael Yakovlev, he rejected the idea that European ships would enforce Trump's blockade while US forces nearby waged a broader war. He said the US needed to make it crystal clear what it really wants to achieve from this conflict. But the Trump administration says that the president is in control. White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy Stephen Miller told Fox News that US has achieved its objectives faster than anybody could have imagined, adding that President Trump was aware of and has even calculated through every permutation and every degree of strategy. He further claimed that this has been by far the most overwhelming victory based on objectives. Discuss this further with me on the broadcast. I'm being joined by Ben Aris, founder and editor-in-chief of BNE IntelliNews and also former Moscow bureau chief for the Daily Telegraph. Ben, thanks so much for joining me here on the broadcast. Always a pleasure speaking with you. It just keeps getting murkier, doesn't it? At this point, now you have more voices saying that there was no imminent threat from Iran. It initially came from within initial days of the war that this is what the Pentagon had told a congressional committee, that there was no imminent threat. In the most recent, Joe Kent, he resigned saying that there was no imminent threat. He doesn't want to be a part of it. Then in the latest, Tulsi Gabbard herself is saying that there was no imminent threat. More voices and more prominent voices from within the camp are mentioning this. None of the European allies want to have any part of this. They're outrightly saying no to Trump, and that's not really a precedent that we can refer to in the recent times. And as far as Australia and Japan are concerned, even they've wanted to have no part of this. Is US largely finding itself isolated in a war that it started itself just with Israel by its side?
Absolutely. It's on its own. And I mean, as we get deeper into the story, it becomes increasingly clear that, Trump has started this war more or less on a whim, that he didn't do any planning, that he has no idea about the strategic implications of what he's done. I think he was looking at the success of the decapitation of the Venezuelan government in
He had a good
in
feeling
January.
about it. He had a good feeling that it's going to happen.
And that went so well that, and he's totally convinced, I think to understand him, he's totally convinced that the American army, the military, is not just powerful, it's invincible. He keeps going on about how it's the most powerful in the world. But he doesn't calculate that that's not powerful enough to do anything you want. And so he started this because he thought he could go in with the US Army and crush it. He said in the early days that, we just need to send the Navy in and we can open the Straits of Hormuz. We have massive firepower, until the Navy itself pointed out, if you put a $13 billion warship in the Straits, then it'll get overwhelmed by the missile and drone attacks, and one will get through, and only one needs to get through in order to sink something like the flagship, the Gerald Ford, which is actually now being withdrawn from the Gulf. It's on its way to Cyprus for repairs after a fire. And he, the option of closing the Straits of Hormuz, it was mentioned to him, but he just dismissed that. And I think he's been totally caught out by the fact that, the IRGC closed the Straits on March the 2nd, the third day of the war. And that's caused absolute chaos. And now he's blundering around. He's realized that the Navy isn't powerful enough. He's bringing up more naval assets, which are steaming on the way to the Gulf, pretty much his entire force. And as we saw in the last few days, that he reached out to NATO allies to ask them to send a military or naval assets, and they will refuse because they don't want to get sucked into what they can see as an increasingly chaotic situation. Because they also realize that you can't go into the Straits. That Iran, despite having a weaker army, has equipped itself very effectively with exactly the assets that can do damage to the US naval assets. And they've miscalculated. Trump's completely miscalculated. And so now he's trying to find a way out. He's doubling down, the idea that, shock and awe is the way the military goes, and we just need more shock and more awe. But that's not going to work. He's also suggested himself, as I think he starts to realize the scale of this crisis, that he might just walk away and leave it as a problem for the Europeans and the Asians to sort out. Because, as he says, that the US doesn't actually use the Gulf, it doesn't import any of the oil that comes through there. All the customers are in Asia.